All right. Today, we are jumping into a topic that affects millions of people, age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. Now, I know it can sound really complicated, but we're going to break it all down using a super helpful framework that makes everything much clearer. Let's get right into it.
So, first things first, why is this condition so tricky? Why is it so complex to get your head around? Well, the biggest reason is that AMD isn't just one single thing going wrong. It's not like a single fuse blows and you just replace it.
Instead, you've got to think of it like an entire system that's under a whole lot of pressure. It's really a network of interconnected stresses, a whole web of issues that includes everything from inflammation and genetics to your blood flow. And, when you've got a system-wide problem, you need a system-wide way of looking at it.
And that is where this number comes in, 11. We're going to walk through what's known as the AMD-11 Framework. It's this fantastic model that takes all the science and organizes it into 11 major, distinct mechanisms that are driving this condition. It really gives us a clear roadmap for understanding what's happening inside your eye.
Okay, let's start at the very heart of the matter, in what we're going to call the retina's engine room. You have to understand, your retina is an absolute powerhouse. It uses up more oxygen than pretty much any other tissue in your body. It is a high-performance engine running 24/7, and that kind of intense workload makes it really vulnerable to cellular stress.
So the first major stress we've got to talk about is oxidative stress. And honestly, the best way to think about this is like rust. Over the years, as our body's natural antioxidant defenses start to get a little weaker, these nasty molecules called reactive oxygen species begin to build up, and they literally start to corrode the most important parts of our cellular engine. And that rust, well, it leads to a couple of other huge problems. First, you get mitochondrial dysfunction, which is a fancy way of saying your engine's power generators are failing. The cells just can't make enough energy to keep up. And at the exact same time, the cell's self-cleaning system gets all clogged up and sluggish. Toxic gunk, like the substance called lipofuscin, just piles up and jams the machinery.
So what in the world do we do about this? Well, here is your basic maintenance plan for that cellular engine room. To fight the rust, you load up on antioxidants. For the power failure, things like aerobic exercise and omega-3s are absolutely key. And to help with that waste buildup and the overheating of inflammation, you really want to focus on good quality sleep and a healthy diet.
Okay, let's move on to our second big area. Every high-performance engine needs a totally reliable fuel supply. For your retina, that fuel is oxygen and nutrients, and it's delivered through this incredibly dense network of tiny little blood vessels. This is the eye's vascular system. It's absolutely critical fuel lines.
Now, one of the very first signs of trouble with AMD is something called choriocapillaris dropout. I know, it's a technical term, but the idea is actually pretty simple. Those tiny fuel lines right behind your macula start to thin out, they get brittle, they clog up. And what that does is choke off the supply of oxygen and nutrients, essentially starving the most important part of the entire retinal engine.
Now, what do you think happens when an engine gets desperate for fuel? It sends out an SOS signal. In this case, it's a protein called VEGF, and this signal basically screams at the body to grow new fuel lines, and fast. The problem is, these new blood vessels are, well, they're cheap knockoffs. They're weak, they're fragile, they're leaky. They end up bleeding and causing scars on the retina, which leads to the severe vision loss we see in the wet form of AMD.
So how do you keep these crucial fuel lines in good shape? It really comes down to being proactive. It means managing your blood pressure, staying active, and eating foods that are rich in nitrates. Think beets and spinach. And this one's huge. Absolutely no smoking. We're going to come back to that in a big way. And of course, early detection is everything, so doing a quick weekly self-check with an Amsler grid is so important. All right, so we've talked about the cellular engine and the fuel lines. Now let's dig into the third area, the physical wear and tear. Because over time, all of this stress starts to cause visible, structural changes right in the macula itself. The most famous sign, of course, is drusen. These are these little yellow deposits made of cholesterol and other cellular junk that just build up underneath the retina. Seriously, just picture sludge building up in the bottom of your engine. This gunk physically blocks the flow of nutrients from the fuel lines to the engine room, and it just pours more fuel on the fire of inflammation.
And while that's happening, the macula's own built-in protective shield can start to wear thin. This shield is called the macular pigment. It's made from lutein and zeaxanthin, and it basically acts like a pair of internal sunglasses, filtering out all that harmful blue light. When your levels get low, those critical photoreceptor cells become way more vulnerable to damage.
So the structural support plan is pretty straightforward. You manage your cholesterol to cut down on the sludge. You eat foods that are packed with lutein and zeaxanthin, like kale, eggs, and corn, to rebuild that natural shield. And you protect your eyes from the outside with a good pair of UV-400 sunglasses. Oh, and getting a consistent night's sleep, that plays a massive role in nightly repair.
This brings us to our last and maybe our most important section. We've talked a lot about what goes wrong, but what about who is at risk? This really gets to that classic debate, nature versus nurture, or in our analogy, the car's original blueprint versus the person who's actually behind the wheel. Now, let's be clear, genetics definitely play a role. Certain genes, like CFH and ARMS2, can absolutely set the stage for a higher risk. But the research is crystal clear on this. It is your lifestyle that determines how the story unfolds. Your genes might be the blueprint for the car you were given, but you are in the driver's seat. Your choices determine how that car is going to perform over its lifetime.
And if there is one choice, one single lifestyle factor that towers above all the others, it is this one. The science calls smoking the #1 modifiable risk factor. What that means is it's the biggest risk factor that you actually have control over. It hits the gas pedal on nearly every single negative thing we've talked about today.
And just look at this chart. It shows you just how massive of a deal this is. When you stack up the relative impact of major health risks, smoking isn't just another item on the list. It is in a category all by itself, completely dwarfing other big risks like high blood pressure and obesity. Quitting smoking is, without a doubt, the single most powerful thing you can do for your macular health.
So let's put this all together now that we understand the engine, the fuel lines, the wear and tear, and most importantly, the role of the driver. We can build a simple, proactive maintenance plan. Think of this as your owner's manual for long-term vision health.
And here it is, the 4 most important, actionable things you can take away from the AMD-11 framework. Number 1, eat a diet that is packed with antioxidants and nutrients like lutein and zeaxanthin. 2, stay physically active. That supports both your cellular energy and your blood flow. 3, manage your overall health. We're talking blood pressure, blood sugar, and cholesterol. And number 4, if you smoke, you have to make a plan to stop.
Understanding this framework isn't about feeling overwhelmed by 11 different problems. It's about feeling empowered, because now you know there are 11 different places where you can step in and make a positive difference. So, the last question is for you. Looking at this whole plan, which part of your engine are you going to tune up first?